Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup, Stage 1, Week 4 preview. So, we are in Week 4. We are at our penultimate week of the stage, and it's getting rather interesting. We do know two teams that are either in or out the playoffs now. That's Excelsior, who are in, and Valiant, who are out. This week will be slightly different. They are starting at slightly different times, and there will be a few less matches than there have been in the previous week. This is because every team in the stage plays 7 matches, not 10, and there's 28 matches overall in the season instead of 40 this time round, because there are more teams, and because there was a complaint last season about players not having enough downtime and getting overworked. So this is what's happened, and there we get weeks where some teams don't play at all, weeks where teams play 2 times a week, weeks where teams play 1 time a week, and that kind of schedule has been harsh on Paris, as we'll find out in a second. Anyway, on Friday, March the 8th, we are starting at 1:30 in the morning GMT, 2:30 in the morning if you're in Europe, and that will be Atlanta Reign taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. Now, if the Atlanta Reign are anything to go by last week, they should beat the Gladiators. Reign looked very good last week, getting that win over Paris, and Reign look like a really good team right now. It'll be interesting to see what happens when the pros get hold of their nerfs and buffs, and Baptiste, who is on the PTR right now. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. There should be a video about that. It might already be out, or it'll be out in the very near future. But Atlanta Reign look very good right now. I'd expect them to get a win over against Gladiators. Excelsior is another thing altogether. And then at 3 AM or 4 AM in Europe, we have the Los Angeles Valiant still winless against the Philadelphia Fusion, who have been up and down of late. Again, I think we have to go for Fusion here. Valiant are really going to struggle for momentum now. They're 0-5 at this stage. This week is Valiant's last 2 games of the stage. Valiant's last 2 games of the stage, if I could speak English properly. So I'd expect Fusion to win that one. At 4:30 GMT, or at 5:30 AM in Europe, we have the Toronto Defiant taking on the Chengdu Hunters. This is a hard one to call because we don't know what Chengdu are going to turn up. They did get whooped by Shanghai the other day, but Chengdu could pull off a surprise win here. But Toronto must win if they want to keep hold of their playoff spot. I would expect a Toronto win here. Moving on to our next batch of fixtures on Saturday, March the 9th. This again starts at 1:30 in the morning GMT, or 2:30 in the morning if you're in Europe, which is very unfortunate because this is the Paris Eternal. Paris Eternal taking on the Vancouver Titans. Now, if we took away Paris' result against Atlanta last week, I would say this is match of the week, because it's possibly the 2 best GOATS teams going against each other, excluding Excelsior in this. Paris have looked very good on GOATS. Vancouver have looked nigh on unstoppable on GOATS. I think Vancouver win this though, simply because Vancouver have so many good players, so many clutch plays in their bag. They've used a few of them already against San Francisco. And Paris, they did falter against Atlanta. And that mindset, I don't know whether it will help them. They can take maps off Vancouver. They could even win the match. But it depends how a new team in the league will bounce back after their first loss. Yeah. Could be a Hangzhou issue with Paris, or it could just be a straight bounce back and they might shock everyone and beat Vancouver, which would make things very interesting. At 3 AM in the morning, or 4 AM in Europe, we have the New York Excelsior taking on the San Francisco Shock. This should be the game of the week. It's really interesting. It's a shame it's on so early in the morning, or late, depends how you look at it. San Francisco Shock have looked ever better. You know, after the loss to Vancouver, which was close, we keep going on about it, but the loss to Vancouver was really an insight on what San Francisco can do. They could have won the match. Vancouver just pulled off some really clutch plays, which got them the win. It could have easily have gone the other way on another day. Excelsior can pull off these clutch plays. Can they pull these clutch plays off as well as Vancouver can? This is why I want to see Excelsior take on the Titans, because I want to see who's better. Are Vancouver or New York better at the moment? We're not going to see it in the stage. We might see it in the playoffs. Who do I have to win out of Excelsior and Shurk? That is a very, very difficult game to call. But I am going to edge Excelsior right now. The only thing that works in Shurk's favour is Excelsior have already qualified for the stage playoffs. The problem with that is, it's not like last year where you've got 40 games. You've only got 28 games in the season, so really you can't afford to drop games willy-nilly just because you've qualified for the stage playoffs. The overall playoffs are the big picture here. And I'm not sure whether Excelsior are going to drop the bat, so I have to go for Excelsior here. But this should be close. I'm hoping this is a 5-mapper. This could be an absolute blockbuster of a match. Not to be missed. Unfortunately, in Europe, it's going to be very difficult to not to miss it. So, I'm going to try and stay up. Oh, God. At 4:30 GMT in the morning, or 5:30 in Europe, so basically at the crack of dawn, Dallas Fuel take on the Shanghai Dragons once again, like they did last week. Dallas Fuel got the better of Shanghai, but only just last week. Shanghai have got a big week ahead of them. They've got Dallas Fuel, which I think must win for Shanghai if they want to get into the playoffs for stage 1. And they also have a certain other team that they need to beat later on in the week. We'll talk about in a minute. At 8 PM, smile. There are no European teams on in this batch that are on at a good time. At 8 PM, we have the Los Angeles Valiant, or 9 PM in Europe. The Los Angeles Valiant in action again against the Houston Outlaws. This is categorically Los Angeles' best chance of getting a win on the board right now. Houston are vulnerable. They did win last week, but they are still a very vulnerable team. The problem is, Valiant have just got no momentum, and Houston did come off the back of the win last week. I think Houston take this. It should be really close, and that will be Valiant's last game of the stage. So, yes, that is me predicting Valiant go 0-7 and lose all their games in this stage. Wouldn't have said that at the start of the season. Seoul Dynasty will take on the Washington Justice at 9:30 PM or 10:30 PM in Europe. Again, I should think Seoul will get the win here. They must win if they want their keep their stage playoffs hopes alive. And then at 11 PM or midnight in Europe, we have the Guangzhou Charge taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. Now this heavily depends on what Gladiators turns up. The problem is, I don't have too much faith in Decay's Zarya right now. They did let them down against London. And it did let them down against Hangzhou. So, I think Guangzhou get this with their aggressive playstyle. And I think Guangzhou may well get their playoffs. I'm surprised by Guangzhou. I didn't think they'd be terrible, but I didn't think they'd be quite this good. Their aggressive style does suit Goats though. So if we do see a meta change in the next stage, how will Hangzhou do? But they do have Happy, who's a very good Widowmaker. So, promising things for Guangzhou. I would expect them to pick up the win against Gladiators. That does mean Gladiators... Is that Gladiators' last game of the stage? Yes, it is. So both LA teams will be done by the end of this week. And I'm predicting them to go 1-6 and 0-7. Oh, bad stage for LA. Next up at midnight, or 1:30 AM on March the 10th in Europe, we have the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Toronto Defiant. This is a big match for both teams. Toronto should really get the win against Chengdu earlier in the week. So this is an early playoff decider right here. Hangzhou must win. This is Hangzhou's last game of the stage. So, if Hangzhou win, they go on a 4-3 record. That's already outside the ideal scope of playoffs. It might just squeak them in there if they get results going their way. So, this is an absolute must-win for Hangzhou. Do I think they'll win it? No, I don't. They were very clutch against Gladiators. But I think Toronto have a bit too much right now. So, this, in essence, would give Toronto a playoff spot. It would be hard for Toronto to lose it from here. In fact, actually, they probably wouldn't, because that was also Toronto's last game of the stage. It's very difficult to track this the way the stages are panning out right now. So this is Hangzhou's and Toronto's last game of Stage 1. I think Toronto take it, and this should put Toronto in a really good position to take a stage playoff place it might even just guarantee them a stage playoff place. A 5-2 record, that should see them into the playoffs. And next up, we have the Paris Eternal in action again at 9 PM on Sunday, or 7 PM on Sunday, sorry, or 8 PM in Europe. This is another difficult game for Paris, though. Paris this week have to play Vancouver, but then they have to play San Francisco Shurk. This is a big seller for where Paris are at right now. Paris, the way their stage has turned out, they will play another 2 games next week. So, if they go 0-2, it's not the end of the world, but it is worrying, because then we will know where some teams are at and whether they can get in the playoffs or not. So by the end of the week, if Paris do go 0-2, we might be saying, look, a 4-3 record is not going to get them there. So, you're saying they have to beat either Vancouver or San Francisco. I don't see it happening. I think Shurk will edge it over Paris. So, it's such a difficult end to the stage for Paris. Next week they'll have to play Washington and Fusion. So, it's easier next week. But it's a difficult stage. Paris, they've done very well so far. The loss to Atlanta could really hurt them. This week is the week I expected Paris to go 0-2 and lose their 2 games at the stage. And they lost to Atlanta, and that really, really could hurt them badly, especially with it being a 4-0 as well. Yeah, we'll see what happens with Paris. We'll look at that in the results video, because we really can't tell right now. They might go clutch against San Francisco. I don't see them beating Vancouver, but they might go clutch against San Francisco. And that would make things interesting for the Shurk in terms of their stage playoff. Stage playoff ambitions, because that is also their last game of the stage. So San Francisco Shurk have to end against Excelsior and Eternal, which is not easy for them in some respects either. So, moving on, 8:30 or 9:30 in Europe, we have the London Spitfire in action for the only time this week against Shanghai Dragons. So, this will be down as a must-win for Shanghai if they want chances of the stage playoffs. The best record Shanghai can get is a 4-3 record. So this will be, against London, Shanghai's last game of the stage. And, it's a difficult one. I think it heavily depends on if they get momentum with a win over Dallas. I think London will win it. Very close. Very close. London are improving. That's without a doubt. But I don't trust London. I just don't trust them. They are looking much, much better than they did at the start of the stage. But the big plus for London is guard. And that ability to pull out an absolute world-class Sombra. Better than any Sombra we've seen in the league right now. And this is the matchup I'd love to see out of the Spitfire and the Dragons. Run Mirror Comps, but run Sombra instead of Diva. I'd love to see Ding versus Guard in terms of Sombra stats. That will give a big indication of where the Shanghai Dragons are at right now. Because Spitfire have the best Sombra in the league. That's what Guard was built for. So, this is an interesting match, but I would expect London to edge it, but it should be really close. At 10 PM, we have, or 11 PM in Europe, we have the Florida Mayhem taking on the Boston Uprising. These are 2 teams I am now not expecting to make it to the stage playoffs, especially Florida. Boston, they have to play Fuel next week. So, that's an interesting game. Boston are outsiders right now. But Florida have to play Washington Justice next week. That is a winnable game for Florida. But at this point, Florida aren't going to make it with four losses on the board, I don't think. It's mathematically still possible, but I don't think it's going to happen. So, Florida seriously needs to start picking up wins. Boston, though, I think their tank line will outdo them. I did say that last week, and then Boston lost to Toronto, but I think Boston's tank line with fusions in now will beat out Florida Mayhem. But it should be close. And then the last game of week 4 will be at 11:30 at night, or midnight in Europe. And it will be the Vancouver Titans taking on the Chengdu Hunters. Chengdu's chaotic style could cause a few headaches for Vancouver, but I would expect Vancouver to come through and get the win there. All making for a very interesting last week. The last week will have quite a few less games. Obviously, as I've been reading out, there are teams that are going to finish up their stage this week. The 2 LA teams. Who else are we looking at? Shanghai. San Francisco Shock. The New York Excelsior. They'll all finish their stage this week. I think Houston? No, Houston have got a game against Atlanta Reign the week after. Toronto, I think, are finishing up this week as well. Fusion have one game next week. But it's kind of closing out the stage for certain teams. So they've got to make their moves. And come week 5, people are going to know we have to do this to get into the playoffs. Whereas some teams are going in blind this week and saying, like, we're going to have to do exactly the best we can do and give ourselves the best chance of getting into those playoffs. I'm talking about the people like Hangzhou, Toronto, Shock, people like that. They need to do their best to try and get into those playoffs. Paris is another one. But Paris have 2 games next week, so it could turn on its head. But Paris need to avoid going 0-2 this week, if they can, in a very, very difficult schedule. I think at the end of the week, we will see either Paris or San Francisco Shock fall out of the stage playoffs. It depends who it is. And I wouldn't like to put any bets right now. Paris. Yeah, I'm betting Paris. I think Paris are going to miss out just because they have to play Shock and Vancouver in 1 week. But that will be it for this one. I'm going to talk about Batiste at some point and how he's going to fit in. Everyone was asking for goats to disappear. It's not gone quite yet. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.